Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Jimmy Dore Show. I have our special guest, friend of the show, author of What's the Matter with Kansas and Listen Liberal, which needed an exclamation point at the end. It's Thomas Frank is with us. Hi, Thomas.
Hey, Jimmy. How are you?
Oh, it's great to have you back. Thanks for being on the show.
Why did she write it? So I've wondered that myself. Now it's obviously people have a right to write their memoirs, and I'm obviously fascinated by political memoirs, and especially something. I mean, I think 2016 is going to be one of these elections that people study for decades to come. And I'm glad to have her share her thoughts on it. And by the way, I don't want to end the conversation without pointing out a couple of things she says that are interesting and that I thought were worth remembering. Anyhow, but
please do.
Like I said, the part about Bernie is really bad. Embarrassing to read, embarrassing for her, and you wonder. And that's that. I mean, the rest of it, I'm fine with. She can write whatever she wants, and it's totally her prerogative to do. And the more books, the better, as far as I'm concerned. But attacking Bernie Sanders is a really weird move these days because he's the most popular politician in America. He's touring the country on behalf of Democrats. He's doing everything he can for her party. Now, he's criticizing the Democratic Party, too. I've been to speeches of his where he's very critical of the way the Democratic Party works. And by the way, saying a lot of the same kind of things that you and I are saying here. I suspect, so the Clintons are famous for being vindictive, and that might be part of it. But there also might be a big part of it is that there is this war going on inside the Democratic Party, and it's going on right now. You know that.
Yes.
And it's the Sanders wing versus the Clinton wing, and she is determined that he not prevail over the Democratic Party. You got to remember the great achievement of Clintonism, and I'm not talking about Hillary specifically here. I'm talking mainly about her husband. So these guys all come out of a group called, and you know this story, Jimmy, they come out of a group back in the 80s and 90s called the Democratic Leadership Council. And this is what Clintonism is. And the objective of that group was to pry control of the Democratic Party away from the left wing, from people like Jesse Jackson. That was why the group existed. And if you go back and read their literature, that's, they were very upfront about that. That's who they were. It was all about moving to what they called the center. And Bill Clinton's presidency was all about getting, centrist things done, by which I mean Republican things, like bank deregulation, NAFTA, welfare reform, balanced budget, all that stuff. By the way, and Hillary regards her husband's presidency, as I mentioned before, she regards it as a great moment in recent history. She does talk about welfare reform and about the crime bill of 94, which, if you ask me, are some of the low points in the history of the Democratic Party. She brushes them both off as either non-important or as Republican tricks or things that we had to agree to in order to get reelected, in order to do all the really wonderful things that we do. NAFTA and bank deregulation, his other great achievements, she doesn't mention at all. She does talk about trade in a very vague, very detached sense. Like free trade's a good thing, but she only mentions it in passing. She never mentions NAFTA specifically. She never mentions, and this one surprised me.
She doesn't mention NAFTA?
No, and she doesn't mention the TPP, which more importantly, because Trump was hitting these two things every day. You remember this?
Yes.
Every rally, he was talking about this, and the TPP in particular hurt Hillary. And by the way, this is when she's talking about things that hurt her in the campaign. She does not mention this, that while Trump is criticizing the TPP and Sanders is criticizing the TPP and the public hates the TPP, here's Barack Obama, president, trying to get the TPP passed the whole time while the campaign is going on. He just won't let it die. And Trump is hitting her for it, and she's trying to get out of it. Remember? She's like, I've changed my mind about it. And Barack Obama's trying to get it passed the whole time. It's an incredible political blunder. Incredible. If you ask me, that's up there with the Comey memo. I mean, that's a big factor, a tactical mistake.
And Thomas,
and she never mentions it.
I was talking about it in real time as it was happening. As Barack,
it was. I couldn't believe Obama was doing it. I'm like, it's like I thought this guy had good political instincts. This doesn't make any sense.
Right.
You know,
So,
by the way, these are the guys who also like to say that they're so practical.
yes.
One of the sections of the book, the part about Bernie, where she goes after Bernie at great length. And the title of it is, it's the book is divided up into sections. And the title of the section is Idealism and Realism. Jimmy, idealism and realism. She's the realist, and Bernie's supposed to be the idealist. And it's like some realist. So that's just like that's lousy politics. This thing with the TPP. Can I give you another example?
Yes.
Raising the premiums on Obamacare
The
2
month
weeks
before
election day.
Yes.
What the hell was that up with that? I know people that had to pay it, and they were pissed off. They were pissed off.
25% increases.
Elections all over the country. You know, what are you doing that for?
Hey, don't you? But I'm sure, I mean, anybody would have let that happen. Lyndon Johnson would have let that happen.
yeah, exactly. No, a realist, knows that you move heaven and earth to keep that from happening before election day, and Barack Obama let it go, man. And that's these people, they like to call themselves realists. Again, that's what the Washington Post was saying, so of course that's what she says. But she's not realistic at all. I mean, in some ways, yeah, she's like, well, I have this policy plan that I worked out with the think tank, and it has 8 steps to it, and here's how it's funded and all that, and she has all the details in place. But she can't talk about NAFTA. She can't acknowledge, the history of the Democratic Party. She can't look populism squarely in the face and see what's going on. By the way, she has wonderful descriptions of it, and I want to get to that at some point. She does have some good descriptions that I wish I had written. They're pretty amusing.
Populism? Sure, share them with us.
Okay, so the best one, and I mentioned it in my Guardian story, is she managed to really piss off voters in West Virginia. You remember this? Her remarks about how her plans were going to hurt the coal mining industry.
Yes.
And so, it's West Virginia, where most of a lot of the coal comes from. Not all anymore, but some. They get real pissed off. It's a big coal state. And so they're real angry. And this is in a part of a long-term trajectory of West Virginia used to be in the 80s and before was very, very Democratic. I mean, very Democratic. It's one of the only states that Dukakis won, that kind of place. Very working class. And used to be very pro-union, that kind of thing. And anyhow, over the years, it's migrated over not just to the Republicans, but way to the right. And Hillary has now succeeded in pissing these people off in an enormous way. And so she goes there to try to make amends. And she goes to some town, and she pulls up in her car, and and there's protesters, and she describes the protesters in detail, and it's really interesting, and they're just mad as hell. And this is the part that got me. One of the protesters is Don Blankenship. You know who this is?
No.
The CEO of the company that owned the Big Branch mine, where all those guys died in 2011. Like 29 guys died, and he's protesting Hillary Clinton. This guy went to prison.
Yeah.
He's out protesting Hillary Clinton. And it's like, whoa, I mean, we are through the looking glass here.
Wow.
It's just nuts. Yeah. Anyhow,
Wow.
I thought that was a great little detail for how crazy this country has gone.
So how else does she describe populism?
She wants to understand it. I mean, she wants to understand it in basically she can't. Like I said, she's blocked by various, conclusions that she has reached earlier in her life. Look, at the end of the day, she is a product of her, of where she comes from, the decade that she comes from, her generation, and their outlook on the world. And these people have, they have changed the Democratic Party. That is true. In some ways, the story I tell in Listen Liberal is a generational story. Whether you're talking about Gary Hart, or Bill Clinton, or the DLC, or Hillary. These are boomers. Al Gore, Michael Dukakis, and they share this background, and they did change the Democratic Party, and in their mind they changed it for the good. They moved away from organized labor, whom they hated because of stuff that happened in the Vietnam era, and they moved towards a different set of issues. And they, by the way, this generation in the 60s was always described as being identical with the professional class. Nobody ever talked about blue-collar workers as part of the young generation in the 60s. They didn't talk about guys working in a factory, even if they were in their 20s. They didn't talk about them as part of the Woodstock generation. Never. It's always the guys at good colleges. It's Bill Clinton at Georgetown, Hillary at Wellesley. That's who they meant. And that's how she and her generation accepted that description, and that's who they are. And she remains that to the end. This kind of technocrat, white-collar, professional class. I'm going to talk to all the experts and get the solutions. Very little intuitive understanding of working-class people or their concerns. I mean, very, very, very little.
Hey, everybody, we have 2 live Jimmy Dore shows in September. September 25th, we're in San Diego, and September 18th in Burbank, California. Get your tickets right there. There's a link right there.